Some of you know this, but I spent 10 years of my career running a 40-bed homeless shelter. And I remember when we had a young woman staying with us on and off, and we found out she had passed away. It was very tragic. And her family lived in the far north of Ontario. They called me and said, would you be willing to speak at her memorial? Obviously, the answer was yes. I was honored. So Becky and I got in the car and went for the long drive. And anyways, we got to the funeral home, and when I arrived, there was just probably about 20 people in there. And I went to the back and found the funeral home attendant, and he said, just so you know, like, you're it. You're the program. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Then he went on to hand me sheet music. And he's like, here's the songs the family's asked you to lead. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't sing. And he quickly responded, well, you better learn quick. And honestly, I remember it like it was yesterday. I just remember immediately thinking, how am I going to get out of this in a respectful way? But then I kind of looked around the corner and I saw this group, and thankfully I had that other voice that said, this is bigger than your comfort. This is actually worth a little bit of discomfort. I remember I walked around the corner, there was no background music, so I asked people, they all had the sheet music as well. I said, turn to this song, and I looked at the back of the room, my wife was looking at me like, oh my God, no. I looked back at her like, please help. And I started the first line of the first song, and it wasn't going too well, and I kept going, and then thankfully someone else joined in, and someone else, and by the middle of the first song, everybody was singing. By the end of the first song and going into the second, everyone was kind of going for it. And I got to tell you, it was a very unforgettable, profound moment. And I remember driving home, and Becky and I were talking about the event, and I said, you know, it's just this reminder that some of the most beautiful things in life only happen when we're willing to just be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, not all the time, but just when it matters. And I would say that when we are having a day like this that's all about tension and trying to step things up as one bioped, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's actually going to take a little bit of wrestling with new approaches. It's some feedback conversations that we'd rather not have. And it's so worth it. You know, the reality is, and you don't need me to tell you this, we live in a world that right now is just more polarized, more divided than ever before. People kind of like to pick their side and, you know, find people on that side. So when you find individuals, when you find teams and clinics and professionals that can actually find common ground, that can actually, with skill, have uncomfortable conversations, not only does it stand out from the crowd, it's a massive competitive advantage.